Welcome to episode 28 of season 5 of Whole Lot of Wolves. I'm Joshua Buckley with co-host Paul LePage.
Greetings.
From San Antonio, right?
Correct. On tour.
All right. Fun stuff. Then we got Danny on the socials.
Hello.
And we have Alex Patakis as producer.
Hey. How's it going?
And making his return again tonight. He always seems to come on after a heartbreaking loss. It is Teddy Ely from Boca Raton. How's it going, Teddy?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, I mean, Paul sent me the email on Saturday after the win, and I thought this was maybe going to be on Monday. So, I was happy about having some positive news to talk about. But
yeah, so we blame Paul for this loss 100% then?
I think so, yeah.
Well, we're recording this Tuesday night, so we will talk about Wolves Fulham first before getting to the actual, good game. And if you're going by Jurgen Klopp rules, really it was a 1-0 Wolves win. Unfortunately, they do count the first minute of each half where Fulham scored. So Fulham won 2-1. Paul, it was a close game. Wolves looked really good in the first half, but it seemed like second half didn't have a lot of answers.
They didn't. It's like, was it a step too far in the two games relatively back-to-back, same starting lineup, not a lot of strength on the bench to rotate at the moment due to injuries and nursing Strand Larsen back to 100%. So it was so Wolvesy in that we had like the perfect opportunity today. If we got 3 points, it would be like effectively like another nail in the coffin of those teams below us, and we'd be that step closer to earlier safety than we've been thinking about off the back of Saturday. So again, like so disappointing that for whatever reason it's still there. It's like, why aren't they switched on immediately at the kickoff, both first half and both second? So Vitor's done tremendously, but it's like those little things are still there, and they're still a doubt, they're still a niggle, and it's just, why can't we get it right, and why can't we be consistent? And we're probably gonna have these same questions throughout the end, through to the end of the season.
I mean, Paul, you say that would have been the nail in the coffin, but according to Danny, Wolves are almost uncatchable already. At least that's what I already heard from him.
Yes, that's true, and I'm willing to relitigate that if anyone wants to.
I loved it. It made sense. Total made sense. Teddy, on those 2 goals, who would you say was most responsible? I'd say definitely Jose Sa for that second one.
Yeah, I would say, I kind of looked at Sa's position in there. It looked like he could kind of win the ball, and then the guy just kind of, when he's just kind of chipped it right over him. It looked like Toddy was actually going to be able to cover if he would have just stayed planted in his net. So, yeah, I think that was definitely on Sa for that first one. And then the second one, I mean, I guess kind of a combination of Semedo and Doherty, just kind of, leaving his opposing wing back just completely free to run down the wing. And yeah, I was surprised to see Ryan Sessegnon's name. I don't think he's played a lot of
I think it was his first Premier League
years.
start in a while.
Yeah, I do too.
First goal in 800 minutes.
Yeah, it wasn't a great start to the game, but I guess happy for him. I guess if you remember, he won Player of the Year over Ruben Neves back in our championship-winning season, but I think he's kind of been injured since. But yeah, it was definitely a slow start there.
Not to jump on the VAR bandwagon again, but I thought for a moment that was going to save us, because when that ball went through, I thought, he's off there, or there's at least enough doubt that they're going to look at it. And the commentators talked to it. There was the obvious pause. They said the VAR team said it was a close one. I was fully ready for the lines to come out, and again, that's what always puts that seed of doubt in my mind when it comes to any of this type of technology or view or outside influence, is that if it's for us as the watching audience, we should have that same review each and every time. They shouldn't talk about it and get the lines out on one game and then not the other until they kind of resolve that consistency. It's always going to put a seed of doubt into how legit it actually is.
Or just use that technology that they used in the World Cup where we had an answer in like 20 seconds. It's crazy. The biggest league in all of sports, other than the NFL in the entire world, and they can't even get something like that done. I don't know. Danny, what did you think of the way that Bellegarde and João Gomez were used today? Because they kind of swapped a little bit. Bellegarde was playing closer to Andre. Gomez was playing closer up. At first, I was like, yikes, Gomez playing closer on offense. Vitor knows best.
I guess so, although it was off of a dead ball situation. I just think, I don't know, it was a strange one. The whole team, I mean, I guess I'll start out by just saying I think that overall, like, Wolves didn't play, like, particularly, like, shit. They weren't good, but they looked especially sluggish. I mean, which maybe they can be, excused for just 2 days after the previous match, but then it's Vitor's choice to go unchanged. And, I would have been happy with an unchanged lineup, assuming that they could muster the energy to sort of do some of the same things as they did against Bournemouth. But I think it quickly became clear that they just weren't up to it. So, specifically to your question, after the opening goal, we did look halfway decent. I mean, we were not just keeping possession, because we had a lot of possession in the second half, but we were actually doing something with it. We were getting into more threatening areas, still couldn't quite get to, the actual place where a shot on goal is dangerous. So not terribly surprising that the goal came from a set piece where we sort of get to be there by default. But yeah, I don't know. It looked very disjointed, and I'm not sure whether that's because of the sacrifices that have to be made to the back line because of injuries, or if it's more just, fatigue from the previous game. You saw that Fulham, made tons of changes. They also played 2 days ago, and, in retrospect, and maybe Vitor feels this way too, I kind of wish he had done that and given ourselves an excuse to play, maybe slightly less adventurously, but also being able to draw them out a little bit more, give some fringe players, maybe some speedier players, some space, but that also goes to our injury problem. So, if Bellegarde can't play more than 60 minutes because he came off, it really sucks to not be able to bring, Rodrigo Gomez on to be able to run at them. So yeah, just all around pretty disjointed. I thought that Bellegarde and João Gomez both, did adequately. They did what they do, but just not with the same energy that they had at the weekend.
Of course, Alex, it is kind of Wolvesy for Wolves to get, 3 points from a match that nobody really gave them a chance from, and then to blow it against a team that they probably should have at least gotten 1 point at home.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to feel that way, like fresh off the game, but I do think going into this, any of us would have been happy to just like pick one of the two and have a win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like both would have been
sure.
a lot. I mean, 4 points would have been excellent, but it's extremely Wolvesy to do it in the order in which they did and to look the way they did in the home match. But that's okay. I'm heartened by the week as a whole if you kind of zoom out and look at both fixtures, I think.
Paul, Vitor commented over the weekend that maybe they've become too reliant on Matheus Cunha. Kind of looked the case again today, and it wasn't his best second half either.
Yeah, that talks to a whole bunch of factors, and I think it's like the squad element, the rotation, the ability to have players complement him, even that you can imagine that now we've gone from last season where you had that triple threat of Cunha, Wang, who was in form and had decent stretches of game time. You had Neto when he was playing and fit and all his assists. All of that's gone away now, and it is solely on Cunha, even to the extent that off the bench, who can you really rely on in an attacking sense to offer something even a little different? And it just goes to that talking point that, if we sell Neto, okay, we're going to reinvest these funds and bring in maybe 1-2 players that may not hit his heights in the first season, but they can contribute and they can be there or thereabouts. Our replacements for Neto so far have been based on tonight: Rodrigo Gomez, who's unfit, Carlos Forbes, whatever the heck's gone on with that, just baffles me. So these are the decisions that are coming to bite us on the ass now, and effectively it's got nothing. I don't feel bad for Cunha. I feel that he's unfairly under the spotlight for this, because it's Cunha or bust at the moment. If he has a bad game, we lose. If he scores, we win. It feels like that polarized at the moment.
I tell you who would have been a nice player with Matheus Cunha. That is Mr. Adama Traore. Just saying. We saw him, Teddy. He actually had an in product, got credited with the assist for that second goal. Overall, how do you feel like his return was to Molineux?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels a little odd. I don't think I've ever seen him quite hit a left-footed through ball like that. It was like Kevin De Bruyne pass, to be honest. So it was pretty impressive. But yeah, I thought Traore actually had a really good game, and it seems like Silva's kind of helped him maybe simplify. Like he would get by a few of us, and then pass the ball off instead of just kind of sprint down the byline and cross it in. So yeah, looks like he's kind of improved since he left Wolves, to say the least.
I think the only surprise tonight was that it wasn't 3-1 on the break with one of Adama, Alex Iwobi, or Jimenez scoring that third. I was generally baffled that didn't happen, and the chances were certainly there as well. So,
yeah, it fell to Alex Iwobi at one point, at 2-1. I knew exactly what was going to happen, and luckily I was wrong. But yeah, I do want to let us not pass over the fact that Adama celebrated his return to Molineux with maybe the first accurate final third pass with his left foot that anybody there has ever seen. So I appreciate the development that he's had.
Yeah, Paul, I think the bigger surprise wasn't that, him or Jimenez didn't score. It was that it took 12 minutes before I brought him up in this podcast going against Fulham.
One thing that was kind of nice being on the opposing side of watching Adama was refs not giving him calls necessarily. Say what you want about Peter Banks at the call, the way he officiated this game. I don't know about you guys. For me, maybe it was an actual lag on Peacock, but it felt like there was like a 3-second tape delay every time he blew the whistle from when the foul actually occurred. And he read the situation to see how are they going to react if I do or do not blow this whistle? But seeing him understand that, in the words of Rob Holding, Adama is built like a brick shithouse, not rewarding him with calls where I felt like he went down a little bit easy against some of our much slighter players like João Gomez and Andre, was at least the one nice thing about seeing him run all over us, was them not getting those calls. So thanks, Peter.
Cunha and Adama looked pretty chummy too. Maybe Cunha stays, brings Adama back. Just saying. Danny's like, can we please move on?
How gray do the dreads have to be before you give up on the dream of him ever playing?
Never.
Okay.
Never.
Stu just turned off the podcast.
Danny, Vitor mentioned injuries really playing a part, especially in the substitutions they were able to make today. Who do you think was the most missed other than Agbadu, who was clearly the most missed.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to fall back on what I previously said, which is that I think in retrospect I would have changed the team a lot more to begin with. That being said, I think being able to rest some of those pieces that put in hard games against Bournemouth and having Guedes on, and I know Guedes has blown very hot and cold and mostly cold, but he was a handful for Villa, and I just think that in a game where we set up a little bit differently and can stretch them, and the obvious other one is Jurgen Strand Larson, who I think once we saw them having switched to a back three, I just think that I have to believe that if Vitor Pereira could have gone back and changed that lineup, he might have swapped out Larson for anyone, for mostly anyone up there, just to occupy some people, because he, didn't really have the time to get into the game or do that. And at that point, Fulham are just, so comfortable sitting there, absorbing pressure. So, at the kickoff, I was pretty supportive of the idea of easing Larson back in, and he can get the game in the cup. But now I would go back and switch that up.
Todd, how important now can we see Agbadu is to this defense? Because Santi Bueno, I'm going to quote Chris Fisher here. He had a good one. He said, Santi Bueno has the recovery speed of Marmite. What do you think, Paul?
I think victim of the squad, and I think in particular about Santi, he's magnifying the fact that he's a decent £12 million centre-back squad player that can come in and do a job. But when asked to be the main man in the middle of a back three, he's not what we need. I think he could probably do better on that right-sided berth, have a little less pressure. Like the need to dominate from that central position isn't as much on the right, but he's coming up against a decent form player in Doc. So I think that's what really hurts us at the moment, is that there's a distinct drop-off with these players coming in, and these are the margins. It's that 5-10% difference, probably a little more if you're comparing Agbadu versus Breno, that turns tonight into at least a point or maybe a win, even though we don't play at our best. It certainly wasn't like a really good Fulham team that battered us even, or was really, really fluid. It was both goals were very preventable. And I think that's like the compound effect of having these players that we aim to rely on, that happens, and it's not as strong as it could be because we've got those key players missing.
Well, let's look at Bournemouth, because that was the nice 1-0 win over the weekend. Teddy, I mean, what was your feeling after that? Because not a lot of people gave Wolves a chance on the road. I want to get you to be able to talk about a win for once.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it definitely obviously felt good to get the 3 points. Kind of look at the table, and you're like, oh, we got, we can still. We have some room to spare, I guess. But yeah, I thought overall the first kind of 20 minutes we were getting battered by Bournemouth, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a long game. Obviously, red card changed everything, and thought the defensive display afterwards was pretty impressive, especially considering past performances. But yeah, the red card just kind of changed everything, and yeah, it was overall a good solid performance, and it's nice to start keeping clean sheets for once. So,
you think, Teddy, that red card was justified? That was the right decision?
That one's kind of borderline on the fence for me. I mean, he definitely rolls over the ball. If he had not have done that, I would say definitely. But just because of that, I don't think that was intentional. To the legs. I could go either way. Curious to hear what other people think.
Yeah,
I'll
what do
go
you
ahead
think,
and
Alex?
say that it was.
No, Danny's.
I'll go ahead and say it was 100% a red card, especially in this day and age, as they say. I saw a lot of people saying that, like, oh, in the modern day. But to be honest, you go back 20 years and that's a red card. And it's not so much that there's intent behind it, but it's the recklessness. It's how unnecessary that tackle is to be made in that manner. He is off the ground. His studs are off the ground and pointed toward his Aït-Nouri's shin. And the fact that he clips the ball on the way through is really not that important. He could have made that same tackle with his foot on the ground, and no one would have had any questions about it. It may have ended up being a foul or a yellow card, but no one would have ever expected that to be a red card. But the fact that his foot's 6 inches off the ground and can clip the top of the ball and then go into Aït-Nouri's shin, I'm kind of surprised that there were so many pundits saying that they thought that it was extremely harsh. I totally understand.
Are you surprised? I mean, it's Wolves.
I totally understand that you don't want to see players get sent off for things that are unintentional, but I'm sorry, there are plenty of unintentional things that are nonetheless reckless and a red card. So I had zero problem with it. I'm 0% surprised that Bournemouth's appeal for that red card has already been rejected.
Yeah.
I don't know. Justice served.
Well, one of the lasting images I felt like from that match, Alex, was Andre celebrating a beautiful tackle in the box, which Bournemouth fans wanted a penalty. Not a chance. Can you remember a group of Brazilians that loves defending as much as João Gomes and Andre?
Oh man, it's so fun. I am always like Team Andre. I feel like I'm always picking him for man of the match. Like he's permanently picking the wine in our Vino for Vitor selection if we went and did a round robin and everybody picked somebody. I would even say there was a point in today's match where I thought I was going to pick him for man of the match when it was level at 1-1, and I thought Wolves were going to get a result out of it. He's just been so good. I think the most impressive thing, we were actually talking about this before we started recording this podcast. Danny was mentioning that he has 3 yellow cards in his time with Wolves, which is insane. Like I've said before, I think on this podcast, I made a joke. He's basically like João without the bookings. Like he just doesn't miss on his challenges, which is insane. So to have, João is a different player, but I do feel like they excel at a lot of similar things. But Andre just feels like a more composed, I don't know how else to say it other than like a more professional version of João Gomes. Like he's almost like he's closer to his final form than João is, I think, which is, I mean, what an unbelievable bit of recruitment. And it's crazy to think that when he came in under Gary O'Neill, we're like, we can't find a use for him. Why the hell did we buy this guy? Like, I mean, the joke was on us, right? Like, well, of course, like that says something about Gary O'Neill if you can't find a use for that player the way he's been playing the past couple of games.
Yeah, I mean, that was insanity. It really was. Danny, I'm gonna let you get a chance to explain / defend yourself on the tweet today, which got a lot of stuff that they're almost uncatchable already. After 3 points this week, go for it. The floor is yours.
That's right. Well, what that was in reference to is that, of course, I was up to my spreadsheet shenanigans, and I just put together the run for Wolves, Ipswich, and Leicester. Of course, before this game tonight, we were all had equal numbers of games, and of course, Wolves were on 22 points, still are, of course, now, and Ipswich and Leicester both on 17. I won't go through the whole thing, but the main points are that all 3 teams play each other starting in week 31, which is in, I guess, about a month or a little less. And Wolves have 7 home games, whereas the other 2 teams only have 5. And as you can probably guess, since it's been a talking point for the Wolves fan base for a long time, Wolves have a decently easier run to the end of the season than the other 2 teams do. And unsurprisingly, a lot of people feel uncomfortable about that because I said that they are almost untouchable already. And I want to point out that I said the word almost. I said uncatchable, not untouchable. And remember that uncatchable is not mathematically safe. The point is that the other teams have to get those points too. So I put it to you. You are a fan of Team A or Team B. Team A has a better run and 7 home fixtures, and Team B has a worse run and 5 home fixtures and also 5 fewer points. Who would you rather be? And I would say that the other 2 teams have not looked particularly good over the past month. I know that we're all extremely scared of what Manchester United are going to do, or more importantly, not do to Ipswich tomorrow night or tonight as you're listening to this potentially. But I think we all would have felt the same thing about what Spurs were going to do or not do to Ipswich over the weekend, and they beat them 4-1. So I'm trying to take a bit of the emotion out of this. And my caveat, of course, is that, of course, I feel nervous about that too. Like, I try not to be superstitious, but when I tweet that out, of course, I think this could look really bad at the end of the season. But I'm just telling you that mathematically, I think that I would be very uncomfortable being an Ipswich or a Leicester fan. I know that things can change very quickly. You know, Ipswich can go on a run, but I promise you there's an Ipswich fan thinking like, Wolves could really go on a run here with their good fixtures.
I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious.
There you go.
And I actually agree with Danny on this. Teddy, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, anyone that's watched Leicester play in the last month, I mean, arguably as bad as Southampton. They're an awful team and are going to be in the Premier League next season. I think the main competition is Ipswich, and again, they just, if you think Wolves defensive, problems are bad, Ipswich will just kind of concede 3 in like 10 minutes, and yeah, just not look good. So yeah, I agree. I would be. Obviously, a lot of the season to go, but I'd be extremely surprised if Wolves aren't clear by at least 6 points come the end of the season. But again, we should still be nervous and stuff. As close as we've been to relegation, we're not out of it, but the 2 teams chasing us aren't good at all. So
I'll just put a bow on and say, if it helps you in your fandom to feel nervous, then God bless. I certainly feel nervous without wanting to be. But, you being nervous doesn't make them train harder, doesn't make Vitor select the right lineup. I know it helps us feel closer to the team that we love. So you express your fandom in the way that you want to. And my final thought on this is that I think that Ipswich and Leicester have averaged something like 3/4 of a point per game. So if you want to bet on them suddenly averaging 1.5 per game or something that they need to stay up, then go for it. It makes me nervous too. I'll tell you that.
I'm sure there's one person here that is not agreeing with you, and that is Mr. Paul LePage, who has been through the doldrums of Wolves fandom.
I'm Team Danny.
Oh, the upset! That's a huge upset.
I again, everything is talked about, statistics, law of averages, you name it. I just think that we are practically safe. It's in our own hands. I've got much more confidence of going to Southampton and going to Ipswich and not losing, and effectively that's all it's going to take, really. So whilst I'm not chill, I'm in a better state of mind and better just common sense about it, really, that it just stacks up now. Am I proud of the fact that we're celebrating the potential 17th place finish? No. Am I really nervous about what this may say about about next season. Definitely, you know. So
not feel awful about that.
I don't even want to even broach that topic yet, because that would just set me off even more. So I think we are okay. I think the just looking at it based on all of that statistics, we're going to be comfortable, and that will show out. I think you mentioned it, Danny, like when we were mathematically safe the last time with Lopetegui, it came to like the Villa game or something.
Yeah,
I could see it working out something like that with a good many like games to spare, we're going to be okay.
And that's a good point that I'm going to bring up, because I did the math, and so I'm not going to waste it. But I remember that season, and I remember feeling just as nervous then, and it was awful. But I want to point out that we secured safety in the game against Villa. We could no longer be caught by any team in the bottom three, right? That's what we're talking about. But in fact, we crossed the points that we needed at the end, at the end of the season, what those three teams got to. We actually crossed that threshold a month earlier at Chelsea when Mateus Nunes scored that screamer. So the point is that I think all of us sort of like in our heads think about like getting to 40 points or whatever. And we see how few points we have and how insurmountable that feels. But the reality is that the bottom three teams are not going to get to 40 points. I don't know what they're going to get to. I think it's going to be very low.
Get to 30 points.
Yeah, they might not get to 30 points. You're asking Ipswich or Leicester to get another 13 points on the board, and it's hard to see that happening in however many, like 10, 11 games that they have. So yeah, it's just, you don't really know when that safety is going to come. And obviously, Vitor Pereira doesn't listen to this podcast as far as I know, but I'm sure that he is saying, the only point is to win the next game, is to get maximum points out of the next game. It's all about maximum points every game. This whole thing that I've been saying is not anything about like, oh, well, we don't need a win. No, we need a win. We need a win or a draw. The most points you can get out of every single game. That's what you need.
Mm-hmm. So you guys, you heard it here first. Danny says, go ahead, start buying your season
You're really trying to bury
for the EPL for next year. I'm usually the one that's getting buried online, so it's kind of nice that
that's fair.
There's another American on this podcast that's getting it.
Yeah, but I'm not going to England in a few weeks.
It's true. I am hoping that maybe your mathematics work out at that game I might be at. That would be fun. Well, hope you like Bournemouth on the road, Paul, because that's where we're going back this weekend with an FA Cup tie at 9 o'clock. Well, 10 a.m. Eastern, Saturday, 9 a.m. for us, Paul. So what are you thinking after hearing Vitor talk about how injuries are kind of taking a toll, seeing how some of the players were a little gassed in the second half? Do you think he throws strongest lineup out there on Saturday?
I don't. I think it will be again, like depending on injuries to the guys that are missing coming back. Like I can't, if every one of those was available, I'd be genuinely surprised if any of them came in to start even. So I think it's going to be quite close to Saturday's starting lineup. I think he'll protect Strand Larsen, especially being away from home, that it will be that relatively the same starting 11 as Saturday. But I just think based on Cunha second half tonight, that's the one player that he's got to rest. And that just gives me the negativity that seems we're down to the bare bones so much. It's a massive drop-off if Cunha's coming out and Sarabi is starting, because that seems to be the only attacking outlet at all on the bench. It means a starting 11 of absolutely zero pace. So it doesn't give you a great set of confidence of going down there and getting a similar result to the weekend.
Oh man, Sarabia, top goal scoring threat with Cunha on the bench. Yikes, hadn't thought of that. Pereira did say after the match he does not expect any of the players who missed today to return for the FA Cup game. Teddy, what do you think? Strand Larson clearly getting healthier, but I'm kind of in the camp with Paul that have him come off the bench again if needed. Let's not risk starting him here.
I mean, I see what you guys are saying. I don't think he'll rest Cunha at all. But yeah, I mean, I want Strand Larson to start from the get-go. Like, I mean, we've literally been playing the last few games with, a front three of, two center midfielders and Cunha. I mean, you've seen it's been pretty awful to watch. So, I kind of want Strand Larson to start from the get-go, have him make it to halftime and then make a decision if he can get to 60 or not. But yeah, I mean, we need to have some attacking output. Bournemouth's a great team. Obviously no red card. We'll see what happens. And I mean, we are in the 5th round. I think we're only 2 wins away from going to Wembley. So it's not like it's that far away. I think we should, try and go full speed, try and get another cup run like last season.
What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I do want them to go. I don't think they're going to completely punt on the game. I just don't think we're like a big enough squad to even really do that without playing, teenagers who I just don't think Vitor Pereira is going to give minutes to. I was looking at the people who ended the first Bournemouth match on the pitch, and I understand, they were a man down, so closing out the game is an easy situation. But I actually would like to see all of them play. Larson came in to start the second half. Giga, who we have not seen much of, I think makes sense if you're going to do any rotation with your back three, then like he would be the one guy I think you can trust to come in. Lima came on. I would have no issue with playing Lima over Semedo, especially if you're going to rest Cunha in any form, because not that, Lima is obviously very inexperienced, especially in comparison to Nelson Semedo, but there's just part of him that feels like he offers more of an attacking threat. He's definitely more attack-minded than I think Nelson Semedo is. And Tommy Doyle, who came on very, very, very late in that game, but he should probably get a start. And I think that, depending on what Bournemouth does with their 11, I don't think those guys starting in place of like the obvious players where you would slot them in, who seem like players, the players we would not want to lose, like Cunha, João, Aït-Nouri. Maybe you play Lima for Aït-Nouri instead. I'd be cool with a lineup like that. I get Teddy's point. I do. I do think we lose sight of the fact that we'd be playing in a quarterfinal if we won. So, if we are, if we're still 5 points clear after tomorrow, as we record this on a Tuesday, I think that gives me greater comfort in putting out what looks like a strong enough team to possibly get a result. Now that could all change if somehow that gap to 18th is any narrower. When this game week is officially over.
Alex, Danny says, "Don't worry, we're fine."
No, I understand, and I mean, and he's right. He is.
I didn't
right,
say don't worry. Continue to worry. Go for it.
It's injuries are the only thing that would make me worry, which is why the whole talk about a cup run is like, is something we can debate, because the only thing that I would be sad about on Sunday or Saturday afternoon is if we lost a player who's important to us.
Yeah, that's a great point. So let's look at the predictions this week. It wasn't great. Alex texted in his stuff before the games. The guys can confirm. And he did get a point for calling a Wolves win against Bournemouth. Congratulations. But Paul getting the 1-0 Wolves win on the road against Bournemouth. Getting out of the basement. That's putting me back in. Danny, you've still got 26 points. You're uncatchable.
Yeah.
At this point.
Uncatchable.
Alex has 18. Paul's got 15. I'm fell down. I'm at 13 points. And Teddy, You got some work to do with the guest spot. Guest spot has 6 points. So let's start out with this cup game. What's your prediction?
I'm gonna go 2-0 Bournemouth win.
2-0 Bournemouth. Okay. Just no faith in. Man, you're the one saying to go with the starters too.
Yeah, well, I gotta get us out of the 6-point basement, so try to be realistic.
Danny, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't really know what to think about this one. I didn't talk about what I thought about the coming lineup, but I could see the case for not big changes, but changes to try to get people into form and whatnot, and kind of like what Alex said. And I'll just go with Bournemouth 1-0.
1-0 Bournemouth. All right, Alex.
Yeah, I'm sensing a theme here, and I also was thinking about a Bournemouth clean sheet, but if we don't rest Cunha, I still think it's likely we score a goal. So for the sake of being different and trying to possibly get 3 points where others might not, I'll say 2-1 Bournemouth.
Okay, 2-1 Bournemouth. Paul?
Ooh, I'm very, very close to doubling down on that 1-0 again. But I think with the rotation, it might cost us a goal. So I'll keep the Wolves win, but I'll go 2-1 Wolves.
2-1 Wolves. Wow. Paul looking at a cup run to the quarters.
It's incredibly hard to predict. Sorry, Josh, before you go. I mean, as we know, Bournemouth are minus a center back, and also Ryan Christie went off injured in their game today. So they might have to do some forced rotation. So it's just very hard to say.
I am going to, how I love picking draws in cup ties, going to penalties. So I'm going to say a 1-1 draw with Bournemouth winning 8-7 in penalties.
Oh, God.
God. It's
as long
let's
as
go nuts, baby.
Yeah, Josh. Yeah.
As long as I don't have to watch a Jose Sa penalty, I'm fine.
It's really hard to predict a Wolves penalty taking order when we haven't seen Wolves take a penalty. So
yeah,
we don't even.
I thought about saying a 3-2 penalty shootout, except it goes to the ninth kicker for each. But then I thought, there's no way Salah's saving that many.
No.
They can't be that far down. So there we go. 8-7 in PK's Bournemouth.
No Stupid Questions is brought to you by Esfuerzo Wines. Located just north of Santa Barbara, California, Esfuerzo Wines showcases passion and 3 generations of winemaking in every bottle. Whether you're toasting some Vino de Vitor or winding down after a day of work, let Esfuerzo Wines transport you to the heart of wine country with each sip. Now at esfuerzowines.com, you can use the promo code VITOR, that's VITOR, at checkout to receive a 30% discount off your order. And don't forget to try the special edition 1-pack wines to show your passion and support for Wolves with each glass. This message is intended for those of legal drinking age. Do not drink and drive. Excessive alcohol consumption may be harmful to your health. If you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol abuse, please seek help. Esfuerzo Wines reminds you to enjoy their product responsibly and in moderation.
All right, our favorite part of the show where you, the listener, get to chime in with your questions, anything at all related to Wolverhampton Wanderers. A number of ways that you can do so. You can reach us on X. WLW Pod is the show's handle there. You can write us an email. hello@wholelotofwolves.com is the email address. And of course, for those of you who watch live on the YouTube stream, YouTube at Whole Lot of Wolves, you could always throw your questions in the chat and we can address them on the spot there. So we'll start with an email that comes from Drew in Pittsburgh. He emailed us, is it possible that Wolves have to replace not only Cunha, but Semedo? Look at this list. Semedo, Sarabia, and Geddes, not to mention maybe Aït-Nouri and dare I say it, Zhao this offseason. So they have to replace their whole team this season. So Paul, do you want to take these in the order in which they came in, or highlight the ones you think they will be replacing perhaps?
I think like all of them, the main ones that Drew talks to initially is that Cunha will be too good a value for someone. Semedo will be too expensive wages wise, given the structure that we're in, which is a topic of conversation all in itself. But then that extends, same deal for Sarabia, age, wage bill. Guedes is probably one of the high earners as well. So I think if they got an offer to move him off the wage bill for those reasons, he'd go. And then again, that just talks to how poorly this squad has been constructed. in that over time you should have that core team, and maybe one drops out, maybe two at a push if you've done really well and you've nurtured that talent and you've been able to sell them at a huge profit and you can recycle that way. But to have effectively half a team to be sucked out, this just goes to why I'm so worried about next season, in that you don't want that level of churn to have to bed that team in again. Your talisman's gone, another captain's gone, highly experienced, ton of appearances, he's gone. And again, we're not even talking about the last two that you mentioned with Ran and João Gomez. Personally, I think Ran hasn't done enough this season to attract that really big bid. And I think probably we've still got João Gomez for another season as it stands. I think it would be taking a big offer on him for him to move.
Yeah, I think João Gomez is the only one who I could really say I see staying, and that's because of World Cup reasons. I think he's going to want to know he has a guaranteed spot where he's at, wherever he's at for the World Cup, which might actually help us keep Cunha. Just throwing that out there. Paul, I see your worries, but I also see, Guedes. We have Enzo Gonzalez, hopefully coming back from knee injury. Aitnery, we have Hugo Bueno, Semedo, there's Pedro Lima. So there are some guys coming back, but then there's no depth, which goes to your point that the squad is really constructed poorly.
Yeah, I agree completely with Paul. Is going to kind of be one of my points on this episode. Again, you take Cunha out of our squad, and I mean, I honestly think that they would be relegated. It doesn't look like we have any chance of scoring without him. We talked about it before. We have like center midfielders playing, on wings. We have 3 center backs injured. It's just a very poorly constructed squad. And yeah, going back to the question, I think Guedes, Sarabia, Cunha, Hwang probably as well. They all leave, and yeah, we'll basically be left with maybe Rodrigo Gomez on the wing. It kind of seems like our whole entire forward line is going to need to be changed out. And yeah, to Paul's other point, I don't see how. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to get these players in early doors to be able to have a preseason with them, and you know how Wolves operate. That's not going to happen. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with the forward line situation for next year. Yeah,
it's going to be at 3-6-1 since we have like 80 gazillion midfielders right now. What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, I think the points are generally well placed. I think that I agree that Cunha's price is probably going to be too good of a deal for someone out there. Whether he wants to go to wherever it is I guess the bigger question. I've said before that I think that there are fewer teams that he fits into than maybe people think, but that doesn't mean he doesn't want to go there for other reasons. So I'm sort of just assuming that he's going to leave. The Semedo Sarabia thing is kind of interesting because it's all about wages. Apparently, this new, wage structure that they're trying to keep to and how much money they're on, which again, Paul said that's a whole nother topic of conversation. But essentially, I think there's a school of thought that our wages are far too low. But if that's going to be the case, that those players are going to go because we don't want to sign them to a new deal with better wages, then that does open the door to, giving Ryan Nori another contract on higher wages because he's on something incredibly low. So that would be a way to keep him if there was a suitor. And I think I guess the sort of silver lining of it to me is that I think we've seen this season how disjointed this team can be, both before and after January. It's a bit better after the January editions, but certainly haven't solved the major problems. And so I think a clear out is not the worst thing to happen to the balance of the squad as long as they are replaced competently. And I think it's completely reasonable that people have a lot of doubts about that. But it's funny that we sit here and talk about whether we're going to stay up or not. And no, we're not mathematically safe. And when you say oh, well, Cunha scored all our goals and who's behind him, Sarabia, and then when it comes to the summer and we're going to lose him, suddenly it's a disaster that we're going to lose this guy who, we all dread seeing replacing Cunha for a cup game. So, I think, it's a little unfair from both directions in a way. So I think there is room to operate there. Just like in the season, there are still many points for us to pick up along the way. And there is going to be plenty of room to operate in the summer in terms of reshaping the squad. And I hope that they seize that opportunity.
Yeah. The one thing that depresses me is that just as quickly as we can celebrate and toast to staying safe, we already have to start thinking about relegation next year and dreading a summer and dreading the, Fabrizio bombs or whatever, or John Percy bombs we're going to get about when Cunha actually is finally going to leave this club. I can't help but agree with everything that everybody said. And I don't know why there's just these weird lasting images from the previous few regimes that we have had that I feel like we've held up at times as almost a somewhat comedic example of how far we've fallen and how poorly our squad has been planned. And now I'm reflecting on that because a couple of those things were one, when we basically had to play Mario Lemina as a striker. And then I saw, a number 5 midfielder playing striker today. And I was like, oh, yeah. One was João Gomez effectively being played as a winger because we were so defensively unstable that we couldn't possibly take him out of the starting 11 and expect him to do double duty and somehow play as a really advanced midfielder / winger. And that happened today. And, Doherty's done great, but him playing as a center back, these issues are still there. It's really funny that the tone around the squad is so different because we feel refreshed by a new manager. We've actually kept some clean sheets and we are still scoring goals and obviously are better defensively, but those underlying issues are still there. So I hope that Fosun is smart enough to recognize that. I hope that Hobbs is smart enough to realize that as much as we needed players in January, we already need them again this summer. Because you can't be an Agbadou injury away from your whole entire team, your starting 11 getting blown the fuck up. And that's kind of what happened. We're a Rodrigo injury, I guess, away too. Not that he's nailed on to start, but it's really poor. What's the point of Carlos Forbes if you're going to have to play João Gomez effectively as one of your front three, right? They've done a really, really poor job in a lot of ways. And I just got kind of sad thinking about that because they almost won 2 straight games to make them even more catchable. But anyway, all right, let's move on. That's a problem for another day, is what it is. Let's go to OJ Bailey's question, who asks on X at WLW Pod on behalf of his fiance, who wants to know why do we sell all of our best players? So I guess we've been talking about this a lot already, but yeah, good question. Why does it have to be so?
I'll go on this one. Jeff fucking Shee. That's why.
Yep.
3 simple words. 3 words that just summarize everything what we've just been talking about. Badly prepared, top-down management. It should all flow and should all be logical. It should all be constructed in a way that shows some sort of plan and some sort of forward planning for the future, rather than panic, fire the coach, have to spend in the January transfer window to stay up, suck the funds out of that investment that should happen in the summer to prevent the shit that you've just gone through from happening again. Bad start to the season, coach. Well, either way, good start to the season that doesn't get supported in January when it should be, and then we just delay the inevitable for the following season when it's a bad start to the season, the coach gets fired, we have to go through all this shit show again. So, Jeff Shee, it is all on you, my friend.
Yeah,
would say separately that his fiance, just Wolves are in bottom 5 just in terms of revenue, like how much money they're is coming in, as well as kind of bottom 5 in wage bill. So like any person, if you want to earn more money and you're a good player, Wolves isn't the place for you. And as again, all the worst teams or bottom teams, sell their players to better teams. So that's why we got to keep on finding the next young prodigy, I guess. So.
Teddy with the blunt truth. You couldn't even disguise that in like a 3-body problem quote for us. Like, you sound like Jeff Shee. You want money? We're not for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, no. Also, like, if we're just throwing out advice to Fosun, let's also just assume we're gonna play in the first 2 months of next season, Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, whoever else is like has an incredible summer, and whoever else is in that mix to start the year favored for Champions League. So understand that, like, the desperation we acted with in January, like, please start doing that now. Like, get these guys in early, build a deep squad, give Vitor a chance, because otherwise, like Paul said, it's just going to be that same cycle that we've been stuck in for the past few years of wanting a manager gone and having to do just enough to survive for one more year. It's like, come on, dude. All right. Carl Whitehouse, sorry, not Whittenhouse. Carl Whitehouse on X asks how we'd like Pereira to sort out the issues preventing us from getting back-to-back wins. How do we rattle a couple off? Danny, what do you think?
Yeah, this is an interesting question to me because I think it goes back to March that we haven't had back-to-back home wins, and it just made me immediately think about how Gary O'Neill sort of, and Lopetegui to a certain extent before him, turned Molineux into a fortress, and there was sort of this real sense around the team and even the fan base that, we were going to stick together and get out of this mess. And yet now there feels like there's just a completely different vibe. And I can't say that it bodes well. Sorry to continue with the down talk, but it's just, I think that there's an acceptance that a lot of these players, not all of them by any stretch, but many of the players, especially the ones who are maybe some of the ones in Drew's question who might be off, are not always up for the fight. And so it's just very hard to turn your home ground into a fortress if that's the case. It's just all the stuff all the cliches that people say, putting in tackles or doing, making the runs to make the crowd get off their seat, these things, that organically makes those atmospheres, just don't seem to happen when they need to happen, especially when we go down a goal. And maybe Vitor can turn that around, but it doesn't seem like that's necessarily his forte. That was more of a Gary O'Neill thing, was to, be very much on the player's side and to, at least get them to fight. And then when that collapsed, that was the end of him. But yeah, I don't know what the answer is, except that hopefully they understand that, as I will continue to say, we are not mathematically safe until we are actually safe. And so, a performance like tonight, although it wasn't abject, we just need much, much, much more energy, even in a game like this, a midweek game where we're now 5 points above the next team. These are the games that you especially need to dig deep.
I mean, Jeff Shee has the solution here, Alex. He walks into the room and he says, "Boys, iceberg are made of the same material. That the iceberg seems separate is only because it is in a different form. In reality, it is but part of a vast ocean."
Such
Think
wisdom.
about it.
Such
Think about it.
wisdom. Oh man, thanks to everyone for submitting their no stupid questions, and thanks to Esfuerzo Wines for sponsoring and offering our listeners a great opportunity to use the promo code VITOR, VITOR, for Vitor Pereira at checkout and get 30% off of your wine purchases. EsfuerzoWines.com.
Well, Teddy, how can everybody get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can follow me on the socials as well as Blue Sky now. There's a few Wolves fans over there at Teddy Ely. And yeah, if you're ever kind of in the area, I try and go to the Lion and Eagle pub to watch the games when I can. So yeah, thanks for having me on, everybody.
That brings this week's show to an end. Thanks to Danny manning the socials, Alex doing the producing. You are wonderful. Listener or streamer, thanks, because this show is for you. We would ask a big favor if you can head to your podcast listening platform of choice. Please review us, give us all the stars, all the thumbs up that you can if you've not yet done so, because that helps increase our exposure, get more fans on board. The same goes for our YouTube channel as well. Please head over there, smash that subscribe button. We're going to be back next Monday. It's going to review Bournemouth Part 2 and then preview another Crunch League game versus Everton. That will be USA Day, which is Saturday, March the 8th. We're also going to be joined by a previous guest who will be introducing a brand new stateside supporters club. So it'll be exciting to learn about more of the pack growing in the States. So this week, as you go about your business and you are trying to define almost uncatchable, just stop and say, up the mighty Wolves.